Okay, live.
Yo, what up, Knicks Nation? Welcome back to another Game of the Week preview. Had a little bit of a break, but good break for the New York Knicks. Everyone needed it. We know Cat's thumb needed it. Everybody needed a little bit of rest these last couple of days so that way we can get ready for one of the hottest basketball teams for tomorrow. And who better to help me cover that game is none other than my guy, James Ham. He covers the Sacramento Kings for the Insiders on ESPN 1320. You can also catch him over at thekingsbeat.com. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to $1,000 in instant bonus cash and a free pick. James, welcome back, man. I love talking Kings basketball with you, man. How you been doing?
Good, man. I'm excited. This is we have a Kings team that's very intriguing again. They got stale, they got boring, they got bad, and all of a sudden they're none of those things, and they're gonna be a good, tough competition for your Knicks.
Absolutely. But before we get into the whole, King side of the storylines, I got to ask you first, what do you think about the Knicks so far?
Man, they're good. I know that it hasn't been perfect of late, but I think that they're one of those teams that you thought on paper looked incredible, but you were worried about how it might function. And to see Karl Anthony Towns sort of like fulfill his incredible potential is really interesting to watch. And the pieces around him, are playing well. I don't think, I don't think everything's perfect yet. But anytime you get two All-Star nominations and I have two full-time All-Star guys, that probably means that you're a great team, that you're doing well in the standings, and then you have a couple of players who are doing exceptionally well themselves, and that's where the Knicks are right now. So yeah, I like it. Length, athleticism, just overall talent. I worry about their depth, but it's the NBA. Not everybody has 8 to 10 guys that can go every night.
That's for sure. Depth is going to be a question for this team moving forward. But yeah, it's great. I mean, they have two All-Stars. Shout out to Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson for being both nominated for the Eastern All-Stars as starters for this year. And it's been such a long time. The last time it was when it was Walt Clyde Frazier and Earl the Pearl Monroe, where we had two all-star starters in the NBA for this team. So it's been quite some time. So congrats to those guys. And to your point, yeah, the team has been good. We're still waiting for we had a really good win against the Atlanta Hawks. We're waiting for a really good, solid win. We've lost to the Celtics, we've lost to the Cavs, we lost to the Thunder. We're waiting for that moment where it's like, okay, we're right there. And we're there. We feel like we're just almost there, right? But there's still, as you said, work to be done. Nothing's ever perfect. It's the first couple of months of a brand new team, whole new starting five. So it makes sense. But talking about Cat, what has been your thoughts about him joining the Knicks? I mean, as someone who's followed the Kings, you've had to watch him play your team multiple times out in the Western Conference. Is this the best he's ever looked?
Oh, I don't even think it's close. To me, the biggest difference is he's rebounding. Right. I did not think that he was going to be able to go in and, I thought maybe he would match Randall and maybe be a little bit better. But I thought also losing DiVincenzo would have hurt your rebounding case. And that just doesn't seem to be what's happening at all. Especially, I thought he might even take some of the rebounds away from Hart, and that hasn't happened. So I'm super impressed with the way that he's sort of stepped up and become more of a a guy that defines a game as opposed to just a really, really good player who stuffs a stat sheet. And at this point in his career, you were wondering if he was ever going to kind of get to this point. But I think playing for Thibodeau, playing in a system with, a bunch of guys who know each other and are comfortable with each other, and he had to fit into that family. I think that's big. And, at some point, players, sometimes they need a change of scenery in order to hit that ceiling. And, you always wonder about guys like Cat, but also, to be honest, what would De'Aaron Fox look like somewhere else? And not that I want to see the Kings lose De'Aaron Fox, but you also, when a player plays for the team that drafted them and they get 7, 8, 9 years into their career with a team, what would they look like in a different situation? And can they sort of hit another level to their game, and I think Cat has. And so happy for him. There's a long time where I wasn't a super big fan of his as a player,
Mhm.
and I know that there were a lot of tough times in Minnesota where like he wasn't always 100% reliable on when he was playing and when he wasn't. And all of a sudden, I think he's found a home, and really, it doesn't get any bigger than playing in New York City. So he's found a home with the bright lights on. And to me, that's really impressive because you can live in obscurity in places like Sacramento and places like Minnesota for a long time where people don't put that pressure on you to be great and to take that next step. And I think he has.
Very well said, James. I agree with everything that you said to the T. And like you, I was not really the biggest Carl Anthony Towns fan. I always thought he fell short of, the of how like they always define him like, oh, this is the guy that you would have if you had to start a team, who are you choosing? And they say you choose Carl Anthony Towns, and that's a pretty big billing to live up to. And then when you watch his tenure in Minnesota, granted, you talk about a lot of front office change, a lot of head coaching changes, and so that organization was in turmoil for a long time until they got something stable. You get Anthony Edwards, you get Finch, and all that nature. But even still, with all of that, he always felt like for the talent that you were expecting him to be, always felt like second fiddle to whoever was there, whether it would be Jimmy Butler or when he was there with Anthony Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing what he's doing now in New York, this is a completely different player. I mean, this is a guy who's like, okay, like he's more finesse. Honestly, like I said that at the beginning of the season, he's kind of changing that whole definition of finesse too, because he's battling in the paint. He's getting physical. He's willing to tussle. He's willing to grab boards. He's willing to fight through contact. I'm not saying that he didn't do those things before, but to the degree that it is now where it's more frequent, then yeah, he can. Whereas, no, he's now making that part of his game, completely different player. And I think just as you also noted, like the players that he's playing with now, having somebody like Jalen Brunson who knows how to facilitate, who can also score, how to connect with like guys like Josh Hart, another guy who knows how to be a glue guy, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, guys who just understand their roles and can play it at a high level. Him fitting into this is definitely the best team he's ever been part of. And because of that, now we're seeing him just play to new heights.
Yeah, and I would add too, I think for a little while, he kind of lived off the idea of what he was supposed to be. And when you come from Kentucky in that program and you see, DeMarcus Cousins come into the league and dominate, and then Anthony Davis come into the league and dominate, I think he just kind of lived off the coattails there of what it meant to be a Kentucky big coming into the NBA and just finding success and being great. And the numbers were good, but the winning wasn't. And taking that next step was never there. And so I think he did a good job of like figuring out how to make that step in his final year in Minnesota. But then right now, I just feel like he really does look like a breakout player that has gone from like a fringe all-star player to a bona fide like all NBA competitor. Maybe he won't get all NBA, but super close to it. Maybe he
Mm-hmm.
does get all NBA, but like he's right there.
Yeah, and I mean this is why he's in top five MVP consideration because of his play right now, what he's doing in
Mm-hmm.
New York. But moving on from the Knicks, let's talk about your Kings now, because I'm very fascinated about this. I mean, we were talking a little bit behind the scenes about the change from, Mike Brown to now Doug Christie, and like team was losing record. I think they were 12th in the Western Conference when Mike Brown got fired. Now you get Doug Christie in, and they've won 10 out of their 12, 13 last games, and they're just one of the hottest teams in the NBA. It's just like a completely different look. Talk about your Kings, man. I'm just so fascinated by them.
Yeah, I think a different look. It's realistically, it's the same dudes that are playing, and they're all playing the same amount of minutes. It's a different vibe.
Mm,
And, I think that that's the biggest thing. And like, look, I really like Mike Brown. I really respect Mike Brown, the winningest coach that I've covered. So in my 15 years covering the Kings, this is my 10th head coach. And so the problem that you have is when you've covered so many coaches and you see so many things go wrong, you see it coming. You know when it's about to happen, when a coach is, I don't, again, I've said this, and losing the locker room is like such a weird term because it never means what you think it means.
hmm
And, like when a coach loses the locker room, I think a lot of people think that there's like fights behind the scenes the whole time and everybody hates everybody and someone's about to get stabbed. And that's really, it's not usually the way it plays out. It's when you watch a game and you see a team let go of the rope and stop playing hard and stop caring about what's happening within a specific game and not giving that fight. And when you see it and you've seen it a bunch of times before, it's always like this oh no moment, like here we go. And we felt that when the Kings lost to Indiana,
Mm,
and then they had a couple of days off around Christmas. They came back the day after Christmas, and they had that disaster against Detroit where De'Aaron Fox fouled Jaden Ivey in the corner, shooting a three up by three. Ivey hit the three, got fouled, and hit the game-winning free throw, and the Kings lost when they had a 3-point lead with 2 point something seconds left. Um, so when Mike got fired the next day, it wasn't all that big of a surprise, but it was still shocking because Mike is a good coach. He'd won Coach of the Year 2 years earlier. He delivered them from the 17-year playoff drought. He had
hmm
done everything that you needed to do in Sacramento. But for whatever reason, the team started to be less and less effective under him. And at the point that he was fired, there were 5 games under 500. Doug Christie had no time to prepare for the Los Angeles Lakers the next day and ended up losing that first game. But then they just go on this run, and it's super impressive. It's just like everyone is smiling, the vibes are up. Everybody, Doug has a really unique way of looking at the game, way of coaching a team, of motivating a team, of I think the biggest thing is the Kings have been a bad home team for the last couple of years, which doesn't make any sense because they've always been a good home team, even during like the horrible times in the 80s and 90s.
hmm
They went on a streak one year where they lost between 2 seasons, they lost 42 consecutive road games and
mm.
they still won 22, 23 games at home. So to see the team 2 years ago that went for 48 wins, but finished the season 23 wins at home and 25 on the road, that didn't make any sense, but it had kind of been something that had been brewing here in Sacramento. And under Doug, they've gone 7-0 at home and gone from 6 games under 500 to a game over 500 at home. And that's just one of those things. Like he has a love and affinity for the city of Sacramento from his playing days. He's got a chip on his shoulder about unfinished business from the 2002 Western Conference playoffs, where he
Mm.
and all of his teammates felt like they were robbed. And it's why he's been in Sacramento for the last, I think it's been a decade, close to a decade. Like he's been back here, whether it's as a television analyst or doing the game as the analyst on the game or being an assistant for the last 3.5 years. He's been back here, and it's because he feels like this is his team and his city, even though he's from Seattle, and this is he feels like he's a guy that can help them get over the hump. So we'll see.
Salute to Knicks Nation. Thank you all for tuning in for another game of the week preview. With me on the other side is my guy, James Ham. He is a co host on the Insiders for ESPN 1320. You can also watch him or catch his stuff, I should say, covering the Sacramento Kings for thekingsbeat.com. So make sure to go check out his stuff there. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. So, Doug Christie, from what you're telling me, he has that anger from losing to the Lakers, man. So I can only imagine if the Kings are ever, matched up with the Lakers in the postseason, it's going to be it's going to be just red. He's just going to see red the entire time, isn't he?
Yes. He's well known for punching Rick Fox. And that came after I think the '02 playoff series. Maybe it was after the '01 playoff series during a preseason game. And yeah, he does have a hatred for the Lakers. But I was telling you before we came on, like I got to know Doug really well. We worked together at NBC. We did pre and post game together. We would commute to San Francisco together from Sacramento, which can take anywhere from 2 to like 4.5 hours, depending on traffic,
Mm.
each way. So we got to know each other really well, sitting in a car, chatting about life, about basketball, and everything else. And like, first of all, he's a very, very interesting dude. thinks about the world in a different way, thinks about the game in a different way, and his ability to connect players and to like motivate them in a different way every single day
Hmm.
is really really unique. And you always talk about guys who played in the league versus guys who didn't as your coaches, and Doug has that played in the league thing, but he also I've said this on a few shows, like in the first couple of days he was a head coach, he quoted Bob Marley one pregame, and in a postgame he quoted Deepak Chopra, and that's just kind of who he is. It's like it's obscure, it's different. It's I remember him giving the art of war to DeMarcus Cousins when he was a
Hmm.
player, trying to like get him to think of life in a different way and the game in a different way and about how to win battles in a different way. And like he's definitely unique. But again, I think that he's connecting right now and he's connecting really well. And when you have somebody walk in the door and figure out a way to go, again, 10-3, when this team looked rudderless and lost,
Hmm.
is huge. And not only do they look rudderless and lost, but the murmurs about whether De'Aaron Fox wanted to be part of the organization long term, whether he'll sign an extension this summer, he, was very clear he wants to win basketball games. And when your best player says he wants to win basketball games and your team is 6 games under 500, I think a lot of people in Sacramento were panicking. And right now, I think Doug's been able to capture the imagination, flip this thing around, and so far so good. We'll have to see how it plays out for the rest of the 38 games left on schedule or whatever it is. But so far, the early returns are pretty spectacular.
Hey, winning cures all, as they say, right?
It does.
So, so with Doug Christie being able to connect and invigorate the Sacramento Kings, as mentioned, they've won 10 out of their last 13 games. Is this something that's sustainable for this team to obviously not like win that type of percentage for the remainder of the season, but is it sustainable to, continue to just be over 500, make it potentially even to the top six of the Western Conference, and really make some noise this postseason?
Yeah, I think it is. To be honest with you, I expect them to make a trade in the coming days and
Mm,
to improve this roster. I think they're going to do a mildly significant swing for the fence trade. It won't be something that impacts like their starting five, but something that definitely adds a lot of talent to the roster. So I would watch for that. They've been linked to guys like Cam Johnson. They've been linked to guys like John Collins.
mm,
And I think that there's a way for them to really take another step. But just to be honest with you, this should have been a like 48 to 50 win team to start. And the fact that they were underperforming so much was a disappointment. And like, not to just like straight up, this team should never have been 6 games under 500. They have too much talent to do that. You'll watch them, tomorrow. If people don't watch a lot of Sacramento Kings basketball, and I get it because the games don't start until 10 o'clock at your time, so there, you don't get to watch a lot of Kings basketball, but, De'Aaron Fox put up 60 earlier this season, and he went 60 and 49 in back to back games. Domantas Sabonis is one of the most dominating players in the NBA. And if there wasn't a guy named Nikola Jokic in the league right now, you would hear Domantas Sabonis talked about as one of the top 5 players in the league. He's leading the league in rebounding. He's also he was leading the league in 3-point percentage until last night's game against Denver, and now Jokic and Luke Kennard have barely moved above him, but he's top 3 in 3-point percentage.
mm.
He's averaging over 20 a game, 6 assists, 14 rebounds. I mean, this guy's a workhorse, and what you'll see from him is he can get into bully mode and start shoving guys around. Even a guy like Karl Anthony Towns, just shove him right under the basket and go up and score. So you've got that, but then on top of that, you got DeMar DeRozan, who is routinely going for 20 and on a lot of nights going for 30. You got Malik Monk that can bust you for 30 at any point in at any given night. And so
Hmm.
you have all of these pieces that are really tough to defend. And you got to figure out ways to take things away. And then you still have guys like Keegan Murray that can shoot the ball, and you still have other players coming off the bench, Trey Lyles and Kevin Herter's had a really rough season, but you have some quality depth, and then you have Keon Ellis, who is their defensive specialist. Like it's a quality team that at the beginning of the season, I would have put anywhere between 4 and 6 seed. But then the way they've climbed the standings so fast and the teams that are around them, you just can't really fear a lot of these teams in the Western Conference. I think the vaunted Western Conference is highly overrated, especially this year. I do not see this being like a dog eat dog situation where every night you're up against the another Western Conference opponent that's gonna, one of them's got to lose type deal. That's not what this feels like. It feels like a bunch of solid but not great teams. Sure, they can beat each other, but at the same time, like I like a lot of the Eastern Conference teams better than I do in the West outside of the Thunder. And so
Hmm.
there is a pathway for the Kings to not only get to the 6 seed, but maybe to the 5, maybe to the 4. And it just depends on, injuries. It depends on whether or not they're going to be able to pull off this trade that they're working on. And whether or not, they can, again, I said stay healthy, but De'Aaron Fox has a thumb issue and he's questionable for tomorrow. And we'll have to see what that means. But he's got a thumb issue on his right hand and he has a pinky issue on his dominant left hand that is horrific. His left pinky is completely demolished. It sticks straight out, to be honest with you, and they have to tape it to his ring finger every game.
Wow.
But for those people, his pinky finger is literally like this, and they have to tape it to his ring finger to keep it straight. If not, the ball would just literally just hit his hand and bounce off every time.
Jeez.
So he's beat up. He's going to need surgery after the season on his finger. There's no way to fix it during the season unless he sits and wants to miss a month and a half. And this is a group of guys that don't miss games. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Wow. This is going to be a good one. I'm looking forward for tomorrow's matchup. I mean, two
Yeah.
teams are just going to really duke it out. I mean, before we get into that, though, I mean, you talked about you seeing this team getting into the top six. So is that the end goal for the season? Like, what is like the expectation for this year? Because it feels like after breaking that playoff drought, there's just kind of like I just don't know what like each team usually has like a trajectory. Obviously, everyone wants to win the NBA championship,
Mm-hmm.
but there's like levels before you get to that position to go win the NBA championship, right? Like for the Knicks, it took like we saw once we got Jalen Brunson, it's like, oh, okay, we're taking next step up. We made the playoffs with Randall, right? We lost to the Hawks. We fell back the year after that. We get Jalen Brunson. We then make it to the second round. Last season, we make it to the second round again. Go lose 7 games to the Indiana Pacers, really due to injuries. That was the big thing. And now you see after this year they make trades and they're like, this is the championship team. This is the team that's going to be together for 3 to 4 years. This is meant to be a championship contender. Where are the Kings in their whole like, I guess, championship contender type arc?
Yeah, I mean, I think you where you were with Randall, where they get to the playoffs and then they take a step back and then they start taking steps forward with Jalen Brunson. I think that's where the Kings, like for whatever reason, they got lost last season, and the last two, well, the last like I don't know 3 weeks of the season, they lost both Kevin Herter and Malik Monk, and they came up just a couple of games short of being a playoff team. And then when they get into the playoff, they won the first play-in game and lost the second play-in game, and so they didn't make the playoffs. That was a huge disappointment for everyone in Sacramento. Like everybody thought that this was a team on the rise and that would take that next step last year to maybe a 52, 53 win team. And this would be the year they got to 55, 56 and was maybe a potential contender that needed some pieces. Where they are today, we have to see. They went on a hiatus. Like I think, what do we call it? An intellectual vacation, whatever you want to call it. And in that, they kind of got lost, and here they are, like climbing back out of the forest, and all of a sudden they look like a squad again. I do think they're better than their record. I think that their style of play is really intriguing. They play fast. They did not hit the 3-point shot well the first 30 games of the season, and we're starting to see that turn around. If I'm gonna say where they are, I think this is a top 6 team in the Western Conference. I think it's probably like a top 5 team in the Western Conference still, even
Mhm.
after their bad start and sort of getting lost. But again, your margin for error is gone. And when you lose games early in the season that you just can't lose, especially at home, you can't lose to teams that walk in that just aren't very good at all.
Yeah.
and let them beat you. And that's what happened last year too. They lost 5 games to the worst teams in the league, whether it was Washington, Detroit, the Blazers, like whatever the bottom teams in the West were, the Kings lost to last season. And when you get to the end of the season, you finish with 46 wins. Those 5 losses came in big. And you throw in a couple of games where they lost, where they missed free throws. Now you're talking about a team that should have won 52 or 53 games, and they didn't make the playoffs because of it. So I think we're hopefully they got most of that mess out of the way, and you're going to lose some games like they did in Denver last night, where you go all out to beat the Warriors the night before, then you have to take a flight to Denver, which is like a 3 hour flight, plus you lose an hour, plus the airport's an hour away from the hotel, and there's icy roads. It was like in the negative whatever yesterday in Colorado, and then you get in at 3 or 4 in the morning. You got to play at elevation on a lack of sleep on the second night of a back to back. You're going to lose games like that, but overall, the Kings haven't really lost games like that since Doug took over. And so they're on the right path. It's just whether they can stay on that path and not, lose their way here and there.
Salute to Knicks Nation. Thank you all for tuning in for another game of the week preview. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. With me on the other side is my guy, James Ham. You can catch him over at the Insiders for ESPN 1320, or you can catch him covering the Sacramento Kings for thekingsbeat.com. And guys, let me tell you about something else. We got Underdog Fantasy as our sponsor for this show. All right, so make sure to use that promo code KFTV to get up to $1,000 instant bonus cash and a free pick. And let me tell you about Underdog Fantasy if you don't know about it already. Look, there's 2 things you can do. You can either do fantasy drafts, which CP and I love to do. We love to go battle and duke it out to see who's going to get whose lunch money for the next day. So you can choose up to 6 players between any league. And all you got to do is they'll do the calculation of all statistics and give you the final total. So that's one way you can do it. The other one is you can go make a sheet, and that's choosing anywhere between 2 to 8 players. The more players you choose, the bigger your return could be. And all you got to do is just choose higher or lower on any statistical category, and you can mix and match from all sports: NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, golf, soccer. It could be any sport that you want to make for your ticket, up to 8 players. And like I said, all you got to do is just choose higher and lower. And you can either choose for all of them to hit their mark, or if you want to be a little cautious, you choose the insured route. So you just got to make, if you choose 6 players, all you got to do is just hit 5, and you still get a little bit of cash. So it's a great way to enjoy sports, try to earn a little bit of money. Go get some beer money, or even compete with your friends, okay? So make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to $1,000 in instant bonus cash and a free pick. All right, let's get back to this, James. Let's wrap this show up and get into the meat and potatoes of what's going on with the show. All right, there's a basketball game being played tomorrow between the Knicks and the Kings. Knicks will be home. And I'm looking forward to this. Like I said, this is good. This is the hottest team in basketball right now after their turnaround in the Sacramento Kings. You talked about them playing fast. Offensively, I think they're top 5 in offensive rating. They're top 10 in defensive rating, and they're top 10 in net rating right now over the last 13 games. So they're feeling it. They're on a good streak, and they're shooting over 38% from downtown, as you mentioned, which is important in this matchup because the Knicks, not a really good team when it comes to guarding the 3. So I'm curious how they're going to match fire with fire in that regards. Knicks, we know what they are offensively, defensively. They're middle of the pack when it comes to defense. Most of it due to communication and not having the full healthy roster yet. We're still waiting for Mitchell Robinson, who can help cure the paint protection that we need. But it'll be a good matchup regardless, nonetheless.
Yeah, I definitely when I see this matchup, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued because I think it's contrasting styles a little bit. I do think that Thibodeau probably kills them that they're not in the top 10 in defensive rating. But the way the Kings are playing right now, like, look, they move the ball. They use Domantas Sabonis as a major hub. They don't do as much of the DHO game as they used to, the dribble handoff game, which is kind of strange to see because it was so
Mm.
successful 2 years ago. But still, Sabonis is moving all over the court. A couple of things I'd watch for. Number one, Domantas Sabonis decided that he's going to be like an elite 3-point shooter. So he only takes like 2.5, 3 a game, but expect him to hit 1 or 2 of them. So somebody's going to have to go out and defend him. Number two, if De'Aaron Fox can't go, he's questionable. I would look at you will see Keon Ellis as a starter alongside Malik Monk if Fox doesn't play. Ellis has become a six starter for this team. He's been
Mm.
absolutely spectacular off the bench or as a in a starting role. He brings energy and a crazy ability on the defensive end. He of course played at Alabama with Herb Jones, and a very similar style player to Herb Jones, just not as tall.
Mm.
But expect to see him a lot of him, especially on Jalen Brunson. And then like look, the mantra for the Kings is to get up 43s a game. And that's a lot. And for the most part, they've done a good job of that under Doug Christie. The last couple of games, that number's dipped a little bit, especially in the loss to Denver. But I think Doug Christie may have also found another player hiding on his bench in Doug McDermott. Doug McDermott came off the bench late.
Dougie. Oh man.
Dougie McBuckets is hiding on the Kings bench, and for that matter, Jay Crowder is too. People don't know that. But Doug McDermott came in last night, and with the way Kevin Huerter has played this season, he's probably played himself out of the rotation at this point. And again, he's a player that could be used as a matching salary to go out and get an upgrade somewhere else. But McDermott came in and hit 5 threes last night in the fourth quarter, gave the Kings a boost. And I would not be surprised to see Doug Christie rely on Doug McDermott over a guy like Kevin Huerter at this point, just because he's instant offense and does not hesitate at all. Like you're gonna watch him going like, holy cow, I can't believe you shot that. And every time he touches a ball, if it's leather, he's gonna shoot it.
Mm.
And so, so it's going to be an entertaining game. I think it'll be a really good game. And then when you think you got the Kings beat, you're really going to get frustrated by DeMar DeRozan just hitting one jump shot after another, mid-range jump shot on you. And so the Kings are versatile, and that's they've got a bunch of three-point shooters. They've got two elite guys at getting to the basket in Monk and Fox. They've got the big man that can really battle you all over and will dominate the glass no matter what. And then on top of that, they have, a guy like DeMar DeRozan who's just like walking 20 points per game. He doesn't even really have to try.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how the Knicks match up in this one. And, you talk about, I'm looking forward to a lot of things, but I think the biggest thing, just from like a whole team perspective, you know, according to Cleaning the Glass right now, the Kings are number one when it comes to accuracy around the rim. So they finish around the rim at a very high rate. And Knicks are 10th when it comes to doing that. Now, conversely, according to NBA stats, the Kings are, top five when it comes to stopping opponents in the paint and the Knicks are middle of the pack. They're 15th. So I'm looking to see how that's going to transpire into tomorrow's game because the Knicks are a team that, they like to shoot the three, but they also do a lot of their damage getting inside as well, especially when you look at someone like Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson, and even Josh Hart, who likes to attack as well. And guys like OG and Bridges, they know how to cut off, they know how to cut as well and just find the passing lanes for guys. So you'll see Brunson or Towns find these guys while they're just cutting down the middle of the lane, just to finish around the rim. So I'm wondering how that's all going to play out in tomorrow's matchup, considering the Kings are a good team when it comes to eliminating shots in the paint.
Yeah, I would say this: the Kings early in the season were horrible defending the three. They've gotten better defending the three, but they figured out a way that if they were going to give up a bunch of threes, they weren't going to let you score inside. And so they've done a really good job of walling off sort of the key, the painted area, and keeping players off of Domantas Sabonis so he avoids foul trouble.
Mm.
So that is one thing you will see. It's difficult to get through the Kings front line, whether it's De'Aaron Fox picking up a dribbler early or it's Keon Ellis. You'll see. And again, I think it's always fun. You get to see this team one time a year, and I hope Fox gets to play because getting to play in MSG is a special thing. But I also think it's really cool to get to see a team like I always enjoy when the Knicks come out to Sacramento and get to see them that one time per year and
Hmm.
see what they look like in person. I think a lot of people will be impressed with the way the Kings handle themselves and the way they fight and the way that they're really like together. It does feel like a group of guys who are growing as a team and like really figuring out a way to complement each other.
And like what, like when you see that, when we hear about teams complimenting each other very well, that's how I think about the Knicks, especially offensively. Just how how the entire offense moves, and I think that's the one thing I will say that if you're a Kings fan and you just love watching basketball, and you're like when you watch the Knicks offense truly thriving, especially with when all of them are making the extra pass, like this team is more than capable of totaling like 36 to 38 assists on a given night when everything's flowing. That's the marvel of this team, especially when you watch Cat work the high post and just is finding guys and just tossing that ball over his shoulder to find guys like Bridges, OG, Hart, just cutting. It's stuff that it's just really awe. It's just awing at that point. But speaking about battling and other matchups, I got to go to the key matchup because I'm thinking about how you know battling for the glass, battling for the points, battling for the inside. That's why I chose Karl Anthony Towns and Domantas Sabonis as my key matchup for tomorrow's game. I mean, you're talking about Sabonis, who's knocking down threes at a high rate. I'm looking up the stats. It's 47.5% from downtown, which is insane. I know it's on low volume, but still to be knocking it down at that type of rate is just, that's almost guaranteed in today's NBA standard when he puts up a shot. Obviously, Cat can do it at a higher rate, knocking down the three. So it's going to be interesting how those guys are just going to match up. Both guys who love to work inside, both guys who like to work outside. Sabonis, man, could be just a assist machine. So I know
Mm-hmm.
he can work the high post. You talk about DHOs, which is just interesting that they're not even running it that much. Like Sabonis can just be a hub of offense for everybody around him. Cat, you know, is the offense, right? you We always complain on the show when he doesn't get touches in the fourth quarter. It's like, yo, give it to the big man because he's just on one right now. He's just battling, he's just duking out, and you'll see second quarter. That's when he starts to get it rocking, especially with the second unit now. That's where Cat likes to shine. So I'm very fascinated with two guys who, you know, pretty similar in how they like to approach the game, scoring inside. And now you're telling me Sabonis likes to shoot from the outside. I'm very curious as to how they're going to just be able, how they're going to cover each other and just go toe to toe in this matchup.
Yeah, I think that it's clearly the matchup of the game. Sabonis is such a workhorse on the glass, and that's something that Towns, is getting better at and is really developed this year. Sabonis has led the league. This is his third straight year leading the league in rebounding, and so you're going to see him like all over the glass. You're going to see him drop his shoulder into Cat and push him under the basket a couple of times and go up through him. The other thing I would watch for is Sabonis and Monk in the two-man game. When
Mm.
the Kings acquired Monk, it was with the understanding that number one, he was one of De'Aaron Fox's best friends, but number two, his statistics in the pick and roll game are off the charts, and I think he is the best pick and roll guard in the NBA.
Mm.
And you'll get to see that. And he comes down the right side and drops passes, pocket passes to Sabonis's left hand, just one after another, and you think you've got it walled off, and they find a way to get through you. So that will be a way that Sabonis gets a lot of his shots is in that pick and roll game. And if Fox isn't playing, just in case he isn't as questionable, I would expect that Monk will probably break double digit assists. So get your underdog ready for points and assists for Malik Monk. That dude loves the bright lights. And if Fox is not playing, I would put him at 25 at a minimum points assists, maybe even 30.
Mm.
So go ahead and use that little arrow on underdog and go up and down. You can actually increase those numbers and your odds. See, there you go.
There you go. Look at this. James helping support our,
Yeah.
our sponsor over here. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate the little
Password
tidbits.
Kings beat just in case.
Oh my goodness gracious. KFTV. All right, that's the promo
That's
code for the
right.
show. Good God. But you talk about pick and roll, and that's also what Brunson and Cat love to do. So it's going to be the battle of the pick and rolls tomorrow, man. I'm looking forward to
Oh
seeing
yeah.
it's going to be pick and roll to death. All right, we're going to see that. And then, looking at the rest of the starting lineup and who covers who, I'm expecting Bridges to get, if Fox does play, I'm expecting Bridges to get the Fox assignment. That's going to be a tough assignment just because he's just a blur. Cat on Sabonis just makes sense. And then I'm expecting like Keegan Murray to guard Jalen Brunson. I'm
Hmm.
expecting OG probably to guard DeMar DeRozan. That's who I'm expecting OG to guard tomorrow. That's going to probably be the matchup. And then, man, Josh Hart on Malik Monk. I think that might have to be this is going to be tough, man, because the two guard rotate the two guard lineup for this one is just so fascinating. Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox are two quick athletic guards, but I think Hart's going to have to be on Monk for this one, just because if Murray's not going to be that heavily involved in the offense, you may have to hide Brunson on him.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued to see too. Is there a point where you have to switch Mikal Bridges onto DeMar DeRozan? If DeRozan starts cooking, it doesn't matter who's guarding him. And like watching him in the first year here in Sacramento, like again, we get to see him once a year when he was with the Bulls, a couple of times a year he was in San Antonio, but man, he's just a bucket. And it doesn't matter which one of those incredible defenders you throw at him, he'll get them in foul trouble. He'll pump fake them. They'll get called. He'll drop his shoulder into him and clear just a little bit of space. He scores like Paul Pierce scored
Mm,
when he was in the league. It doesn't matter how tight you are on him, he's still going to score. And yeah, it's just the versatility of this Kings offense going to be interesting against a really, really long athletic team that they typically struggle with a little bit.
mm. This is man. I'm just looking
Should
for.
be a
I'm just
good
like
one, man.
I'm like this is really
Yeah.
going to be a good one. I might be the first one to 200 points. I know the Kings like not too long ago had that type of game where they almost put up, or if they did put up 200 points in a matchup, right? I think it was like 180.
176, 175 were the Clippers in double overtime. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, this might go the distance in that type of scoring match. I mean, the
Yeah.
offensive firepower between both teams is just going to be fascinating. And just to talk on like DeMar DeRozan, shout out to my guy Los. He's in the Air Force out in Sacramento, and or by that base that's near Sacramento, and he's a Bulls fan. So he was upset, but also happy that DeMar DeRozan got to go to the Kings. He's like, oh, now I get to go watch my guy go
That's
hoop
right.
every single night. So shout out to you, Los, and yeah, now he gets to go watch one of his favorite players play, and also calls him a bucket. Let's get to the X factors, man, because I know you got to get out of here, and I want to make sure that we wrap it up. Who are your X factors for tomorrow's game? I'll let you go first since you're the guest.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be Keon Ellis. Keon Ellis has quietly established himself with the Kings as an incredible, sneaky little 3-and-D player, and the fact that he went undrafted out of Alabama and worked his way from again a two-way contract into a regular contract to a rotational spot. He is absolutely elite at getting through screens, at getting in passing lanes, and he's so long and athletic. Really, again, a lot like a Herb Jones type player, but at a guard position, not a forward position. And even Mike Brown he compared one time to, oh boy, why am I drawing a blank? Anyway, it'll come to me eventually. Uh, 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 the Spurs, great defender during their glory years. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on his name, but
Bruce,
anyway, Bruce Bowen. Yeah,
yeah.
yes, of course. That's who he compares him to. His ability to fight through screens, his ability to recover when he goes underneath the screen and just pop right back out. But
Mm,
going up against Brunson is a whole nother story. Brunson is so physical and so low to the ground that I think that that's going to be like an X factor matchup. And then look at Keon Ellis's 3-point percentage. The guy just like Sabonis. It's not at a great volume, but he doesn't miss. And so if you leave him open, he's going to burn you.
okay. So Keon Ellis for you. For me, I'm gonna go with Deuce McBride for tomorrow. Deuce McBride just returned, not just returned, but came back from injury, and he's been looking to get his shot back into it. He's starting to work his way back into like that guy we saw before he left and missed over like a week of basketball. But I'm going with Deuce McBride just because in this matchup, you're looking at these two guards in De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk, and I need one of our best perimeter defenders to just walk one of these guys up, and not necessarily like stop them, but make it uncomfortable for the night. And there's only one
Mm-hmm.
guy that I know that likes to do that, especially guard 94 feet out, and that is one Deuce McBride. So I know defensively he should come out there with that energy, knowing what the assignment is, and I'm looking forward for him to do that. And then 3-point shooting. I mean, when we get him knocking down his threes off the bench, sidestep in, step back, he has just gotten so comfortable when it comes to just shooting threes. He really adds that offensive firepower that we need for this team coming off the bench, because once you remove the entire starting five, or just even leave Cat with the second unit, you need a little bit more, man. And so Deuce is usually that guy who give the Knicks that jolt of 3-point shooting to help space everything. And I'm looking forward to him in this matchup, just because like the Knicks, like when they don't have their guys on the court, you could just sometimes with the second unit out there, teams are just able to get right back into it. But Deuce, he's capable of being a microwave scorer at this point from downtown, and they can really keep that lead and keep the Knicks into it. So he's my X factor for tomorrow's matchup. So Keon
That's good.
Ellis, Deuce McBride, they're your X factors. James, I appreciate you for coming through. As always, please let the listeners know where they can find you. And if you got any work up and coming, we should be on the lookout for.
Yeah, you can find me at thekingsbeat.com. You can on YouTube with Kingsbeat. Also ESPN 1320. I have a show Monday through Friday from 10 to noon. We talk basketball, we talk football, we talk everything else. Also on Twitter at James underscore Ham NBA. That's my, and then Blue Sky. You can find me
There
all
you
over the place. Like we're roving journalist people. That's what we do. We're all over the place.
All right, there you have it. So make sure to give James a follow on X, and make sure to go check out all of his other shows and his written work. Man, he does a phenomenal job covering the Kings and just talking basketball and all other sports. James does phenomenal work, as I said. So make sure to go give him a follow. And Knicks Nation, shout out to you for tuning for another Game of the Week preview. Hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to $1,000 in instant bonus cash and a free pick. And shout out to all the franchise channel members in here. I see my guy JJ in here. Shout out to you, JJ. I saw John Talento in here as well. I see Laturia B. Shout out to you as well. Who else we got in here? I see Coach Rubens. I see your arrogance will destroy you. Junior Caroma, shout out to you as well. Shout out to all the franchise channel members. Shout out to all the regulars. Jay from East New York, shout out to you too, my guy. All right. Appreciate everyone for tapping in as always. And you already know what to do. Make sure to catch play by play for tomorrow. And make sure to catch post game. We'll be bringing this thing down. Salute to Knicks Nation. Thank you all for tapping in for another Game of the Week preview. We out.